The first warning sign wasn't the scent of her perfume lingering a little too long in our car, or her sudden obsession with making new connections. It wasn't even the surprise appearance of a recurring luxury spa charge on my credit card, one she insisted was essential for stress relief. No, the real giveaway was her missing wedding ring. And it wasn't lost. I checked. I tore through the usual spots, the nightstand, the bathroom sink, even her jewelry box, where it damn well should have been. But it wasn't there. What I did find, though, was something else entirely. A receipt. Custom-tailored, black silk dress. A size smaller than what she usually wore. The price? $4,000. Paid in cash. The boutique it came from was on the other side of town, nowhere near her usual shopping spots. That was the first red flag. The second? The purchase date. 2 weeks ago. The exact night she told me she'd be working late at the boutique, reorganizing inventory. I folded the receipt and slipped it into my pocket. I wasn't clueless. I knew when a storm was rolling in. That night, I watched her. Not in any obvious way, just the little things. The way she hesitated before answering me, checking her phone first. The way her voice softened too much when she said my name, like she was measuring every word. The careful pauses. Emily had always been a good liar. But even the best liars follow patterns. And patterns? They crack under pressure. So I didn't ask about the dress. Didn't bring up the missing ring. Instead, I waited. And just like clockwork, she set her own trap. At dinner, she leaned in, fingers grazing the rim of her wine glass. "We need to talk." I nodded, slicing into my steak. "Go ahead." She hesitated, her eyes flicking to my face like she was running calculations. I let her. Then, with a dramatic sigh, she dropped it. "Ryan invited me to a private event. Just me and him." Her voice was casual, but I caught the flicker of tension. "It's important," she added quickly. "For business." There it was. A confession, dressed up as an opportunity. I chewed, swallowed, dabbed my mouth with a napkin. "A private event," I repeated. "What kind of business requires a private event?" She exhaled sharply, already playing the wounded wife. "Jake, this is exactly why I didn't want to bring it up. You always assume the worst." "I assume based on facts. So give me some." Her grip tightened around the glass. "It's just one night, okay? He has connections I need. It's not a big deal." I leaned back, watching her. Not just her words, but the way she avoided my eyes. I already knew how this would play out. The script was predictable. Act 1, denial. Act 2, justification. Act 3, blame. And right on cue, she delivered her next line. "I worked so hard, Jake. I built my boutique from nothing." A beat of hesitation, then she pushed forward. You? You don't understand what it's like to hustle in this industry. Ryan does. He respects it." There it was. The comparison. The subtle insult. I took a slow sip of my whiskey. "So you're saying I don't respect your work?" She flinched. Just a little. Then, she forced a smile. "I'm saying you could be more supportive. Not everything is about your ego." And there it was. The shift. Flipped the suspicion back on me. Make me the bad guy. Classic. She thought I'd take the bait. Instead, I exhaled like I was thinking it over, then smiled. "You're right, Emily." Her expression barely shifted before I dropped the bomb. "Go. Have your night with Ryan." Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time, she hesitated. That flicker of confusion, I knew it instantly. She hadn't expected that. She expected a fight. She wanted one. Instead, I handed her the one thing she had no argument against. Permission. She blinked. "Wait, what?" I shrugged, finishing my drink. "You said it yourself. It's just one night. I trust you." She searched my face, looking for doubt, jealousy, regret, anything. She found nothing. And that's when I knew she had no clue. No idea I was already 2 steps ahead. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was heartbroken or angry. I wasn't broken. I was calculating. From that moment on, every move she made wasn't just a betrayal, it was evidence. The next morning, she was glowing, humming as she made her coffee, checking her phone every few minutes. smirking at whatever was on the screen. She was already living in her little fantasy world, picturing herself in Ryan's orbit. Champagne brunches, penthouses, expensive gifts, zero consequences. She thought she'd won. So I played my part. Calm, supportive, the understanding husband. I kissed her goodbye when she left for work. Then, I made 2 phone calls. The first? A private investigator. I wanted real proof, not just suspicions. No excuses. No way out. I told him exactly what I needed. Pictures. Conversations. Hotel check-ins. Every last disgusting detail. The second call? Ryan's fiancée. Yes, fiancée. Her name was Natalie. And from what I knew, she was the type who wouldn't tolerate this kind of betrayal. Rich, beautiful, and most importantly, ruthless. When she picked up, I didn't waste time. Natalie, I think you should know what your fiancé is planning. Silence. Then, a cold, clipped response. I'm listening. By the time I hung up, I knew I'd tipped the first domino. Emily, meanwhile, spent the next few days floating through life like she was on a victory lap. Working late. Or so she claimed. Her bank transactions told a different story. Cash withdrawals from places she never went before. One night, she came home late, reeking of cologne that wasn't mine. I said nothing. I just watched. And I waited. Then, Friday night arrived. The night she thought I had blindly accepted. The night she was supposed to be with Ryan. I kissed her goodbye at the door, watching as she wheeled her expensive little suitcase to the car. Have fun, I said. She beamed, leaning in. Thank you for understanding, babe. This means so much to me. Then, she was gone, walking straight into her own execution. I grabbed my keys. It was time to watch the fireworks. I didn't follow immediately. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I let her get comfortable. Let her think she was untouchable. I poured myself a drink. Sat on the couch. Waited. Not anxiously. Not nervously. Tonight wasn't about chasing. It was about letting her fall. Then my phone buzzed. The PI. She just checked in. I glanced at the message, slid my phone back into my pocket, and grabbed my jacket. Showtime. Ryan hadn't picked some sketchy motel off the highway. Of course not. He went all out. One of the city's most exclusive 5-star resorts. The kind of place where celebrities, CEOs, and politicians came to disappear. Where discretion was guaranteed. But tonight, discretion was off the table. I parked a block away, took a deep breath, and walked right through the grand entrance like I belonged there. Steady, confident, a man with nothing to hide. The lobby reeked of wealth. The rich scent of leather and polished wood, fresh-cut flowers that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. A concierge gave me a polite nod. I nodded back. No suspicion. No questions. I already had everything I needed. My PI had been thorough. Room 714. A luxury suite. Of course. I took the elevator up, heart steady, mind sharp. I wasn't here to plead. I wasn't here to argue. I was here to end it. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I noticed her. Tall, elegant, standing near the door, arms crossed. She turned slightly, just enough for me to recognize her immediately. Natalie, Ryan's fiancée. Perfect. She met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw the truth. There was no heartbreak, no sadness, just cold, calculated intent. I strolled up beside her, hands in my pockets. You ready? She smirked. I was born ready. Then, she pulled out a keycard. Even better. Security loves me, she murmured, swiping it through the lock. The light turned green. The door clicked open. We stepped inside, and there they were. Emily, Ryan, wrapped in nothing but sheets. Wine glasses on the nightstand. Their expensive dinner half-eaten. Emily turned first. Confusion flickered in her eyes before morphing into sheer, horrified shock. Jake! Ryan sat up, eyes darting between me and Natalie. His face drained of all color. Oh, Natalie, I can explain. Slap. The sound cracked through the room. Natalie's hand connected with such force that Ryan actually staggered. Emily? She was still frozen, staring at me like she was trying to figure out whether this was a nightmare or a bad dream she could wake up from. I smiled. "Don't stop on my account," I said smoothly. "You look like you were getting comfortable." Her lips parted, then closed, and just like I knew she would, she tried to recover. "Jake, I can explain." I held up a hand. "No need." I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. Her own voice filled the room. The recording, laughing, giggling, telling Ryan how easy I was to manipulate, how predictable, how she just needed to test the waters before deciding if he was worth leaving me for. Emily's face crumbled. "Where did you?" I tilted my head. "You really thought I wouldn't check?" Ryan groaned. "You recorded us? Are you insane?" "Natalie?" She laughed. "Oh, this is better than I imagined," she said, turning to Ryan with a look of pure contempt. "You're done," she continued, voice sharp and final. "I already spoke to my father. The engagement? Over. The business deal? Dead. The apartment? Get your stuff out by morning." Ryan panicked. "Natalie, wait." She didn't. She spun on her heel and walked out, leaving the door wide open. I turned to Emily. She wasn't crying. Not yet. She was calculating, trying to find a way to spin this, a way to salvage what was left. I didn't give her the chance. I stepped forward, voice low. "I want a divorce." Her breath hitched. "I already filed. My lawyer will contact you in the morning." "Jake, wait, we can." I leaned in, my voice barely above a whisper. "Enjoy your night, sweetheart. You earned it." Then I walked out, and I didn't look back. I didn't go home. Not yet. There was something deeply satisfying about watching Emily fall apart in real time. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I had spent weeks preparing for this. Every move calculated. Every possible reaction accounted for. And now? It was time for the grand finale. I stepped into the elevator and checked my phone. One new message. From Natalie. That was fun. But I hope you're ready, because now we really ruined them. I smirked. She didn't waste time. Neither did I. By the time I got home, Emily had called me 6 times. Then, 10 texts. I left them unread. Let her stew in the silence. Instead, I opened my laptop, logged into our joint accounts, and click. Every shared credit card? Frozen. Her boutique's emergency fund? Redirected. The little rainy day savings she thought I didn't know about? Transferred to my private account. Everything that was legally mine, now fully in my control. And the best part? She couldn't even be mad about it. Because the paperwork? Already signed. 2 hours later, I heard it. The front door slammed open. Emily stormed in, heels clicking against the floor. Her breath came in ragged, furious bursts. She was still wearing that ridiculous, overpriced dress. The one I now knew had never been for me. Her face was a wreck. Smudged lipstick, streaks of mascara, wild desperation in her eyes. "You think this is funny, Jake?" she spat, tossing her bag onto the counter. "You're really gonna freeze my accounts like some psycho ex-boyfriend?" I leaned back in my chair, perfectly relaxed. "Ex-husband, actually. Soon enough." She flinched, just for a second. Then, she switched tactics. "Okay, fine. I messed up," she said, exhaling sharply. "But you don't get to just screw me over like this." I laughed. "Oh, sweetheart. That's exactly what I get to do." Her jaw tightened. She grabbed my laptop and slammed it shut. "We can fix this, Jake. We don't have to throw everything away over one mistake." Oh, there it was. The bargaining. One mistake, I echoed, standing up. I was taller than her, but Emily never backed down. I stepped closer, just enough so she could see the amusement in my expression. "Emily," I said evenly, "you weren't even going to tell me. You were going to spend the night with him and then decide if I was still worth keeping." Her nostrils flared. "That's not fair." I cut her off. "No, you know what's not fair?" My voice stayed calm, but the words landed like a sledgehammer. "That I spent years supporting you, paying for your boutique, taking care of you. And the second some rich asshole waves a little money in your face, you think you can trade up?" Her expression twisted. You're making this sound so much worse than it is. I laughed again. Unbelievable. Emily, I literally played you a recording of your own words. The only reason she was even standing here was because she got caught. Silence. Then, she did something unexpected. She smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. Fine, Jake. You want to play the villain? Fine. Let's play. I arched a brow. Oh, you still think you've got a move left? Her eyes gleamed with something almost triumphant. I still have the boutique. And guess what? Half of it is mine. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. You sure about that? For the first time, her confidence wavered. Reaching into my desk, I pulled out a folder and tossed it onto the counter. She hesitated. Didn't touch it. I smirked. Go ahead. Take a look. Slowly, she opened it, and I watched as the blood drained from her face. What the hell is this? She whispered. I didn't rush my answer. Took my time, poured myself a drink, let the silence stretch. Then I spoke. That, sweetheart, is the contract you signed when I funded your boutique. Her lips parted slightly. I continued, voice calm, steady. You remember, don't you? The one that made me the primary investor? The one that states, clear as day, that if you ever committed fraud, infidelity, or financial misconduct, I could buy out your share for exactly $1. Her breathing hitched. I took a slow sip of whiskey, savoring the moment. And guess what? I set the glass down. I just exercised that option. She staggered back, gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. No, you wouldn't. I grinned. I already did. Checkmate. Emily's breathing turned shallow, erratic. I could see it. The exact moment she realized she wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything. Her boutique? Gone. Her money? Gone. Her backup plan with Ryan? Obliterated. She opened her mouth, closed it, her mind racing, searching for anything that could salvage this. And I let her, because I knew she'd try. Emily was a survivor, a manipulator. She thrived on control, but for the first time in our marriage, she had none, and it was killing her. Then, just like that, the panic vanished. The anger dissolved. She straightened, smoothing out her dress, flicking her hair over her shoulder as if she hadn't just been exposed, humiliated, and ruined. And then, she smiled. Jake, honey. Her voice was all honeyed warmth, sweet and smooth like she hadn't just had her entire world ripped out from under her. This is ridiculous. You don't want to do this. I smirked. There it is. The final act. Seduction. She stepped closer, trailing her fingers lightly up my arm, her nails barely grazing my skin. We've been together for years, she murmured, looking up at me through thick lashes. I made a mistake. But you don't just throw away something real over one bad decision. One bad decision. I chuckled, catching her wrist mid-movement. Firm, unyielding. Her eyes widened. I leaned in, close enough for her to feel the shift in power. My voice dropped to a murmur. Emily, sweetheart. I whispered, my grip tightening just enough to send a message. I'm not throwing anything away. I let go, stepping back, watching as she barely masked her frustration. Because this was it. Her last move. And she had just lost. Fine. Her voice snapped like a whip, the mask cracking at the edges. You want to play this game? Let's play. You may have frozen the accounts, but I have my parents. My friends. And guess what? She tilted her chin up defiantly. Everyone's going to see you as the bitter, insecure husband who couldn't handle his wife's success. I laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, Emily. I exhaled, shaking my head. You really think you still have people on your side? Her smirk faltered. What the hell does that mean? I grabbed my phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. A group chat. Her group chat. And at the top, a voice message. I hit play. Her own voice filled the room. Bragging. Mocking me. Laughing about how she was stringing me along. How she needed to test the waters with Ryan before making her decision. How I was too blind to catch on. And the chat? It was exploding. Her so-called friends weren't defending her. They weren't on her side. They were tearing her apart. WTF, Emily? This is disgusting. You're seriously the worst person I've ever met. And then, the best one. From her closest friend, Lauren. Lose my number. We're done. Emily's face went white. Her hands trembled as she reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. No, no, I murmured. You don't get to control the narrative anymore. Her lip quivered. Jake, please. Begging. She was actually begging. But I had nothing left to give. I pocketed my phone. Picked up my keys. Pack your things, Emily. Her breath hitched. I want you out of my house by morning. She didn't move. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a near whisper. You have nothing left. No business. No money. No reputation. I watched as the realization settled in. And Ryan. I smirked. He won't touch you now that Natalie's cut him off. Her eyes flickered. Desperation. Fury. Helplessness. I tilted my head. So tell me, Emily, what's your next move? For the first time ever, she had no answer. She stood there, trembling. Her perfect little world was falling apart around her. She always had an escape plan. Always had someone to manipulate. Always had a way to land on her feet. But now, she had nothing. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I could see it in her eyes. She was scrambling, searching for an angle, a loophole, a way to turn this around. And then, just like I expected, she snapped. You think you've won? Her voice shook, not with sadness, with rage. She grabbed a glass from the counter and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, shards scattering across the floor. You smug, arrogant bastard, she screamed. Her hands clenched into fists. You think you can just erase me? That you can destroy my life like this? I crossed my arms, completely unfazed. You destroyed your own life, Emily. Her breathing was erratic, chest heaving, eyes burning with pure hatred. And there it was, the real Emily. Not the charming, ambitious woman she pretended to be. Not the sweet, devoted wife she played when she needed something. The predator. The woman who used people. Discarded them when they were no longer useful. And now, she was the one being discarded. And she couldn't stand it. Fine, she spat, voice dripping with venom. But don't think for a second that I'm leaving quietly. She turned toward the stairs, but I caught her wrist, stopping her mid-step. You're not taking anything that's mine, I said, voice dangerously even. Her eyes flared. Your house? Your money? She let out a bitter laugh. You wouldn't have any of this without me. I grinned. Oh, that's cute. You really believe that? I let go of her wrist, watching as she stumbled back, her confidence cracking. She was unraveling, and I was going to savor every second of it. You want to see how far you get without me? I asked, tilting my head. Go ahead, Emily. Walk out that door. Let's see how well you survive without my name, my credit cards, the connections I built for you. She hesitated, because she knew. Without me, she was nothing. And then, like the coward she'd always been, she reached for her final, desperate weapon, tears. Jake, please, she whimpered, her entire body shifting. The anger, the smugness, the defiance, gone. In its place, a fragile, broken woman. I don't have anywhere to go, she whispered. Her voice cracked, soft and pleading. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. Please, don't do this to me. She reached for my hand, her touch light, trembling. And for a single moment, I saw it. The woman I once loved. The one who used to kiss me goodnight without fail. The one who held my hand through the worst moments of our lives. The one I built a future with. But then I blinked, and all I saw was the liar. The cheater. The woman who laughed behind my back about how easy I was to manipulate. I pulled my hand away. You did this to yourself, Emily. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the wreckage she built with her own hands. Emily didn't leave. Not that night. She stomped, paced, slammed doors, rattling the walls like a caged animal. But she didn't walk out, because she was terrified. Terrified of facing the world without my money. Without my name, without the safety net I had always been. And that's exactly what I wanted. I let her sit in that fear. Let her feel it closing in on her like the walls of a prison cell. Then, I went upstairs, locked my bedroom door, and slept like a king. The next morning, I woke up early, showered, got dressed, and made my way downstairs. Emily was sitting at the dining table, a cup of coffee clutched in her trembling hands. She looked hollow, like a ghost of herself, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing for her. Not pity, not anger, not even satisfaction, just nothing. She barely lifted her head as I grabbed my keys. "Jake," she rasped, her voice raw. I didn't stop, didn't even look at her. I walked out the door and into my new life. First stop? The bank. Emily had a bad habit of throwing money at problems to make them go away. And even though I had already locked down our accounts, I wanted to make sure there wasn't a single loophole left. The banker confirmed it. "Mr. Dawson, all joint funds have been fully transferred to your private account per your legal claim. Your wife has no remaining excess." Wife. The word felt foreign now, like it belonged to a different life. I thanked him, signed the final documents, and left. Step 1, complete. Next stop, Natalie. She was already waiting for me at a private lounge downtown, sipping champagne, looking as composed as ever. I sat across from her, and she smirked knowingly. "So," she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Did she self-destruct yet?" I chuckled. "She's getting there." Natalie twirled her glass, watching the bubbles rise. "Ryan tried calling me last night," she mused. 5 times. I leaned back. "Let me guess, begging?" She nodded. Pathetically. We clinked glasses. 2 people who had been stabbed in the back. 2 people who were done playing nice. Natalie leaned forward, resting her chin on her palm. "So, Jake," she murmured, eyes gleaming. "How far are you willing to take this?" I smiled. "All the way." Her grin widened. "Good," she said, voice laced with something almost devious. "Because I have an idea." By the time I got home, Emily was gone. Her closet? Empty. Her vanity? Cleared out. Only one thing remained. A single handwritten note on the kitchen counter. I picked it up, skimming over the words. "Jake, you think you've won. But I will rebuild. And when I do, you'll regret this. You'll regret everything. Emily." I smirked, crumpling the paper. Because Emily was too stupid to realize one thing. She wasn't getting back up this time. I made sure of it. The moment I tossed Emily's note, my phone buzzed. "Natalie." I answered, already expecting her to have something brilliantly cruel planned. "She's at Ryan's," Natalie said, amusement dripping from her voice. "And she's desperate." I chuckled. Of course she is. Emily had no money, no business, no allies. Ryan was her last lifeline. But what she didn't realize, she was running straight into a burning house. "How's he handling it?" I asked, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "Poorly," Natalie said, barely suppressing a laugh. "He still thinks he can fix this. But after last night, his reputation is in shambles. My father pulled all his business ties. His clients are dropping him like dead weight." I took a sip, leaning back against the counter. "So what's your move?" She exhaled slowly, her voice full of satisfaction. "I want to watch them turn on each other." I smirked. "Then let's turn up the pressure." 2 hours later, Natalie and I were sitting in a sleek black SUV, parked across the street from Ryan's penthouse. The building was private, high security, armed guards at every entrance. But we didn't need to break in, because we were going to let them destroy themselves. Through the massive, floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor, we saw them. Emily, yelling, her hands flailing, pacing back and forth. Ryan, slumped on his overpriced couch, his head in his hands. I rolled down the window slightly, listening through a directional mic Natalie had borrowed from a friend. Inside, Emily's voice was raw, desperate. "You told me you'd take care of me, Ryan. You said I wouldn't have to worry about money, about anything." Ryan groaned, rubbing his temples. "Jesus, Emily, you think I planned for this? Natalie just ruined my entire life." Natalie smirked beside me. "Damn right I did." But Emily wasn't done. "You were supposed to be my way out," she screamed. I left everything for you. Ryan's patience snapped. I didn't ask you to leave, Emily. You did that all on your own. Silence. Then a shift. Emily's whole body went still. Ryan realized his mistake too late. Her voice dropped, eerily calm. So what? You're just done with me. Ryan stood up, pinching the bridge of his nose. Look, we had fun. But this isn't what I signed up for. Emily didn't move. Then, in a chillingly soft voice, she said, You're just like Jake. You pretend you're powerful, but when things get tough, you fold. Ryan's jaw tightened. Get out, Emily. She didn't move. I could feel Natalie grinning beside me. Oh, this is delicious, she murmured, watching like it was her own personal theater show. Inside, Ryan had finally reached his breaking point. With an exasperated sigh, he grabbed Emily's purse and threw it toward the door. Emily didn't argue, didn't plead. She just picked up her bag, lifted her chin, and walked out. Right into the cold, empty night. For the first time in her life, she had nowhere to go. No one left to call. No one left to use. She stepped onto the pavement, her heels clicking a little too sharply, her coat pulled tight around her. She glanced around, waiting, expecting. But there was no waiting car, no chauffeur, no safety net. The doorman didn't even spare her a glance. She turned in place, searching, hoping someone would be there for her. But the only thing on that quiet street was a black SUV. Ours. She didn't see us, but we saw everything. Emily pulled out her phone, scrolling fast, probably looking for a lifeline. Maybe her parents. Maybe one of the boutique girls. She dialed. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. I smirked. Natalie had done her job well. She hadn't just taken down Ryan's deals. She had burned Emily's entire social network to the ground. Emily's grip tightened around her phone. Her whole body tensed, her jaw clenched. Then, finally, she dialed the last number she had left. Mine. I let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then I picked up. Silence. Her breath was shaky. Uneven. I waited. Then, her voice. Small. Fractured. Jake. Just one word. But in it, regret. Fear. Surrender. You're out of options, I said, my tone flat. Silence stretched. Then, a slow, ragged exhale. I have nowhere to go. I looked over at Natalie. She raised an eyebrow, waiting for my next move. And then, I did the one thing Emily never expected. I laughed. Not cruelly. Not loudly. Just enough to let her know. This was over. That's not my problem anymore, sweetheart. And before she could say another word, I hung up. Emily stood there, staring at her phone like it had betrayed her. Like she couldn't believe that I had actually let her go. And then, reality hit. The weight of it crushed her. She sank down onto the curb, burying her face in her hands. For the first time in her life, Emily lost. And the best part? I never even had to lift a finger. She did it all to herself. She sat there, frozen, on the curb outside Ryan's penthouse. The queen, once perched so high on her throne of deception, was now just another piece of discarded trash on the street. I could have left, could have driven away, let her rot in the mess she made. But something in me wanted to watch. Not out of cruelty, out of closure. I needed to see it, the exact moment she realized it was over. I watched as she pulled out her phone again, probably checking her bank accounts, searching for some secret stash I had missed. But she found nothing, because I had taken everything. Every loophole. Closed. Every backup plan. Destroyed. She was drowning. And this time, no one was coming to save her. I saw it happen. The shift. Her posture sagged. Her breath hitched. Emily Dawson, the woman who always had the upper hand, finally understood what it felt like to be powerless. And then, she snapped. She lifted her phone, her last connection to the world, and hurled it into the street. The screen shattered on impact. And then she screamed. Not words. Just rage. Helpless, directionless rage at a world that had stopped bowing to her. People turned. Some paused. Some whispered. But no one stopped to help. No one cared. And that's when I knew she was finished. I stretched back in my seat, Natalie tapping her nails idly on the dashboard. I have to say, she mused, I didn't think I'd enjoy this as much as I did. I smirked. Told you it'd be worth it. She sighed, swirling the last of her champagne. So what now? I started the car. Now I go home. And I don't look back. I pulled away, leaving Emily alone in the wreckage of the life she burned down herself. And for the first time in years, I was free. I didn't check the news the next morning. Didn't bother with social media. Didn't even wonder where Emily had ended up. Because it didn't matter. She was irrelevant now. I had spent years building a life with a woman who never saw me as enough. A woman who measured love in dollar signs and status. And now, she was nothing more than a lesson learned. Weeks passed. Life moved forward. Divorce? Finalized. Business? Better than ever. Sanity? Fully restored. I worked. I went to the gym. Started saying yes to things I had ignored for years. Trips. Dinners. New investments. Life was simple again. Clean. Then, one night, I got a text. Natalie, thought you might like this. I clicked the link. It was an article. Ex-socialite Emily Dawson evicted after business scandal. Claims sabotage. I chuckled. Of course. The article was merciless. Emily had burned through the last scraps of goodwill she had left. She had tried rebranding her boutique. No investors touched it. And without money, she had nothing. Worse, she had debt. Her lavish lifestyle had finally caught up with her. And now, she was spiraling. The best part? She was blaming me. My ex-husband orchestrated this. He turned everyone against me. She whined to some gossip site. I could almost hear her voice. The victim act. The self-pity. I tossed my phone onto the table, shaking my head with a smirk. She still didn't get it. I didn't ruin her. She did that all on her own. That night, I sat on my balcony, whiskey in hand, watching the city stretch out before me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the next betrayal. I wasn't wasting energy on someone who never deserved me. I was just living. And damn, it felt good.